Let us all now close our eyes, connect our hearts and our minds to God, our Creator, to Jesus, our King Light, the good spirits here present today, and thank them for giving us the opportunity of being here again, the opportunity for learning from this lecture that we're going to be hearing too. And we ask the good spirits here to enlighten our friend Joyce so she can guide us through this lecture and we'll be able to absorb your lessons, the lessons that you brought to us through your Son, our Master Jesus. And so be it. So, Joyce is all yours.
Hello, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Always a pleasure to be here, and it's very nice to see new faces. Welcome to everyone that is coming here for the first time, and welcome to those who are following us through the internet. So today, my topic is about miracles. And I found a very, very interesting topic, especially because there is so many concepts behind the word miracles, right? And it's something that really attracts many, because when everybody here, when you hear about, oh, a miracle happened, it triggers that curiosity on us. Oh, what is that? What happened? And then someone tells a history that really sounds like a miracle. It all brings us that question. Oh, wow, that's wonderful. What's behind this, right? Because we as human beings, we are still very connected to that sense of mystery, and we try to find what it is about, and we're going to see what Spiritism is going to tell us about miracle. And basically today, as usual, my talk is pretty much to bring some reflection, and at the end, you're going to leave here with your own concept and understanding about miracles. I'm not here to teach anyone, but I want to bring the reflection and make you think about it, what you understand about what miracles mean. We know that many religions use miracles in many different ways, and most of us here maybe comes from a different background or were raised in a different religions, and we see miracles explained to us in many different ways. If we look in the dictionary, the Merriam-Webster dictionary, when we look at the meaning of miracles, one of the meanings that they say is exactly like that: an extraordinary event taken as a sign of the supernatural power of God. And this is the meaning that most of us carry, and that this is the meaning that most of religions explain, right? In other words, miracle is everything that you cannot fully explain, that you cannot fully understand, but at the end, the explanation and the understanding is supported by the supernatural power of God. And based on that, you can understand why many religions use that meaning so strongly, because it's also a way to keep the faith from the followers, right? To say that, this you cannot understand, you cannot explain. It shows how powerful is God, because only God can make this. So if you are not, as human being, you are not really able to understand, but it shows to us the superiority and the powerful of God. So bring us that awesome feeling, right? That, oh, wow. So, and the main religion use this as a tool also to keep the power and keep the followers following that principles and that religion, right? And many leaders, religious leaders, use this as a way also, they want to reinforce the idea of the miracles, and they want to make sure that nobody really understands the principles behind it, because what's actually interest to them to keep everybody ignorant on that perspective, because that will make them think that there is a powerful God behind that explains. So you don't need to understand, right? There is so that make us feel inferior and and make us feel like someone that needs to follow that principle because there is a powerful, a more power spirit or entity or God like governing all that idea, right? And then comes spiritists. And what exactly is the essence of spiritism? That what basically all the principles that spiritism teaches is based on one thing, what is called by Kardec as a rational faith, right? Because Kardec, one of the most important things that Kardec defends is that for you to measure and to understand and to really believe that you have a strong faith is when your beliefs and everything you trust is going to be true no matter in which time, no matter in which circumstances. So you can go back to the time of Jesus and you can come right now in 2023 and that principles are still true. A totally different time, totally, like the humanity evolved so much since the time of Jesus, but your faith is still true. So, and that is only possible if everything is explained by reasoning. No more, like, let's leave behind all those wonder, all those idea of mystery, all that blind faith that governed us for so many decades and years and centuries, right? So the Spiritism came exactly to bring reasoning to everything, to show that everything has an explanation. Yes, there is a God, there is a supreme intelligence that governs all of us, no doubt about that. But we're going to see that supreme intelligence in a very different perspective, not on that miraculous idea anymore. So when we start to study Spiritism, we start to think about miracles in a very different perspective. And that's what I'm going to bring for you guys today. I don't want to say that miracles does not exist, but I want to look into that in a different way, not more in that supernatural, mysterious way that are defended by many people. Okay, so does that make sense if you think about miracles as we used to? And why are we so focused on miracles? Exactly because of that. Like as human beings, we are connected in some way of anything that we cannot fully explain. It brings us that sensation. It's like seeing a magician show, right? Like everybody says, "Wow, wow, what happened? Oh, what?" Like looks like a miracle what the guy is doing there, right? But we know that there is something behind it. It's all some kind of illusion that he plays with, but there is a true explanation. We know that, but still it brings us that feeling, oh, what is going on there? So based on these principles, we're going to see what Spiritism is going to tell us today. So basically, as I said, the Spiritism came with that triptych, like of religion, science, and philosophy. Those three principles, they are connected all the time. And there is a true connection in anything we do. So in Kardec emphasized that many times, that we cannot have a poor religion and leave the science behind, the same way we cannot have poor science and leave religion behind. And Chico Xavier used a very interesting comparison to explain that too. He used to say that if we have only a poor religion inside of you, you're going to be a body with a heart, but without a brain. And if you are guided only by science, you are a body with a brain, but without a heart, right? And that makes sense. We need to connect both to be full, to be complete. And actually, more we study about those two, like about the spiritism, we understand how much they are connected, right? It's very silly to think that we can separate both. And when we start to study about miracles, we start to understand that all those miracles, especially the ones that we are mainly connected, that those are the ones that the gospel presents to us that was done by Jesus. Most of the miracles in the gospel are the ones done by Jesus, right? And when we start to go deep in that, we're going to realize that nowadays, especially nowadays, with all the progress of science and all the knowledge that we already acquired compared to more than 2,000 years ago, we can explain most of those. They are not like even cases like when someone was dead and brought to life. We now understand that that person was not dead as we know as a dead today. I mean, probably was a case of catalepsy that looks like a dead body, but was not full dead. Because also, it wouldn't make sense to believe that Jesus was so powerful, and we know that he has his power as a superior spirit, but it wouldn't make sense for him to bring somebody, a body that was fully like that was already passed away, to bring to life, because that will break one of the God's law. That is the law of reproduction, the law of recycling, and the law of life, right? So would it be possible for Jesus to really show his power? He needs to break God's law. And that's the main principle why Spiritism is telling us that all the miracles that we used to believe does not make sense. Because it wouldn't make sense for God to show his power and superiority by bringing Jesus and make him break many of the God's law through miracles. Okay? So that's why once we start to understand, as more we evolve it, we understand that there's more things behind that explain. At the time, it looked like a true miracle because people knew, like barely knew concepts in science or any other areas, right? Even technology, all those things are very, like, still a very primitive world, right? And the people were very ignorant in many aspects. We are still very ignorant, but at that time was even more. So that time was important for Jesus to call attention of people, to bring them, to call their attention to their religion in general by doing those phenomena. But with time, we all evolved, the society evolved, and we fully understand nowadays that we don't need that like mystery anymore to really believe on what Jesus means, to really believe on the power of God, to really believe that there is a supreme intelligence that governs all of us. We don't need someone to come and do a miracle to make us think of that. And we don't need to be afraid, and that is another thing that happened in some religious practice, that they are kind of afraid to say that what Jesus did was not a true miracle, because they believe if they fully explain scientifically that phenomenon, they are diminishing, they are decreasing the power of Jesus. They are decreasing his superiority as a superior spirit. And by studying the Spiritism, we're going to see that's exactly the opposite. Because actually, when we start to study Spiritism and understand more about the teachings brought by Jesus, we're going to understand that the phenomenon was nothing, was like the less important thing done by Jesus. The principles of love, charity, and care, and the forgiveness, all that was brought for him, that's what mattered. The phenomenon was important at that time. Nowadays, that is like, it's very small in all of his time between us, right? So by having having that understanding and bringing reasoning to all that you see, that you read, that you study, it's going to strengthen a lot more your faith, and it's going to give you the strength on your beliefs that you need to overcome any circumstances. Because your faith will not feel weak anymore in any circumstances. You know, you understand what is going on. That's make the difference, right? And when we want to study and understand more about miracles, I recommend the book of Genesis. Like half of the book, basically, is talking about miracles, is explaining exactly those concepts in understanding what miracles mean under the view of Spiritism, and what the miracles done by Jesus, what they mean and what they represent and why they happen. So obviously I'll not cover all that today. I just want to bring some reflections to you guys, but it's a reading that it's quite interesting and I recommend. So part of that chapter about miracles, I will show a little bit here today. So it starts by saying in the book of Genesis, one of the characteristics of a miracle, properly speaking, is that of inexplicability, which implies its accomplishment by supernatural laws. So in other words, once you are able to explain, that is not a miracle anymore. Okay, so it's something that no matter what, it's caused surprise and make people say, oh, what is going on here, right? That idea of not being able to explain is what characterizes a miracle. So if you think about that, just that basic principle, you can say that science produces miracles every day in the eyes of an ignorant. And that's true, because everything around you, if you don't know, it can be a miracle, right? For me, for example, I use technology a lot, but I know nothing about how computers work and all those things. So it sounds like a true miracle that at this moment, there's someone in the other side of the world that is able to see me and listen to me. How come my image and my sound is traveling all this way through our Wi-Fi and get to that? And how come someone was smart enough to create that? That's a true awesome thing. And so it could be like, I could say, this is a real miracle. Like, how come this is possible, right? But that's what the Genesis is bringing us, that reflection. If something like this, so obvious, it causes you that impression, so you can have an understanding how all the phenomena done by Jesus caused similar impression at that time, right? Because we could barely understand how our body, the organism, the organs, we didn't even understand the organs that we had in our body at that time. And so it was very impressive to see his power of cure, of bringing sight to people that were blind and making those who didn't walk able to walk. All those things was like, wow, right? So we see now we can explain many of those facts through the scientific knowledge that we have today. Plus, obviously, in Spiritism, we also study and understand and believe in all the connection between the matter and the spiritual realm. All the connection between the incarnated spirits with the discarnated one. And that plays a big role in all of those miracles too. If we want to be ignorant and don't want to see that, you're always going to see those phenomena, or at least some of them, as a true miracle. Because if many of them was also a result of some effect of the spiritual realm or other spirits into that people. Like many of those miracles done by Jesus was cases of obsession, that Jesus was just able to remove the obsessors from that body, and that individual came to a kind of a normal life, right? So those things, if you don't understand and open your eyes that our life is not just this, that we touch, that we feel, if you don't open your mind to all the evidences around us that shows that we are truly also directly connected by being a medium, like a extended medium or not, we are still, all of us here, connected to the spiritual realm and to the influence of other spirits, right? And this knowledge is also very important to fully understand what was explained as a miracle. So Spiritism comes, and the Genesis explained that too, exactly to show that the knowledge and the scientific knowledge and the evolution in the humanity to understand more about things came to make that Jesus' teachings even stronger and not weaker. So understanding the miracles will not diminish in any way what Jesus brought to us, right? And will not decrease his power and his influence. And actually, if you think about it, and even if you consider all figures that incarnated in this planet, and we had many very important ones, not only Jesus, important to other religions too, that are leaders in other religions. They played an important role in humanity, but there is no one that is so, I'm not saying the word powerful, because that's not the correct word, the meaning that I want to bring, but there was no one that's influenced so many people and generations and anything in general than Jesus, right? And that's basically tell us that there is a little bit more behind that than just the miracles that he did. And by thinking about that, in other words, it made me think what is really the miracle that Jesus brought to this life. I think all his legacy and all his teachings and all the transformation that he did in the humanity and that he still does is the real miracle. And what is exactly that? That is the power of love, care, forgiveness, compassion. That no one did that better than Jesus in the whole history. Like we didn't have any incarnated spirit on earth that was able to do that so perfect. Because we know as spiritists that we understand that why that happened, because he's a perfect spirit. He's the only perfect spirit that incarnated between us, like a highly perfect spirit. So that's why he was able to do that. But that is the most important miracle in my mind. And Spiritism was actually want us to bring that attention. If you want to think in a miracle, think in Jesus as a guy that performed so much miracles, think about that. That is the main miracle. And that is the call, by doing all those phenomena around us, that is the call that he did. He wants to call us to look into the essence of his miracles, which was all behind faith, love, and care. When we are able to grow that inside of you, you are able to overcome any circumstance and you are able to achieve the transformation that he's calling us for, right? So basically that's the true miracle that he's calling us for, and that's the true miracle that Spiritism is also calling us for, the true transformation that is only possible by the true love, the care, the respect, the forgiveness. It's not easy, right? We are still governed by many vices. We are still in that process. So basically, all this reflection that was brought by Spiritism was to calling us our attention to the fact that does that make sense for Jesus to show how powerful he was, how important he was, if in order to show that he needs to break God's law. That would not make sense. It's the same as, because the miracle could only have happened if one of the laws were broken, right? I mean, like bringing a dead person to life, you need to break one of the God's law. Okay, so in essence, you might think, oh, but God, not Jesus, God is powerful enough for that. Yes, I'm not questioning that. Maybe God, like, can do that. He can do anything. But does that make sense? Why he would do that? To show his power. What is the same as thinking on a scientist that creates a very important machine, and in order to show how intelligent and smart he is to create that machine, he needs to break that machine apart to show us that he was able to make it. That does not make sense. Would be the same as God in a way to show how power he is, he needs to break his own laws, the laws that were created by him. So in essence, it's important for us to understand that any circumstance, in any time, in any situation, the laws of God will never be broken. That is a number one principle that we always need to understand. And by understanding that, we can bring reason to everything we believe. And that will strengthen our faith and our understanding. Because you will see that the only way for you to believe in God is by understanding that the law of justice will never be broken. Never. So what is happening to you or to anyone around you will never be unjust, never be a victim. The law of justice is never broken. So maybe whatever is happening to you is calling you for some reflection to understand and to learn, because you, as a spiritist, you know that the law of God will never be broken. It only makes sense when we also have the understanding that we are immortal spirit. Because at the same time, it's impossible to understand and to fully believe in the law of justice if you believe that the life is just this time here. It's just this matter. It's just this body. So how come I will accept the fact that I came to life with a paralysis, with a deficiency, with a disease? How come this is going to be just, right? So the justice will never be possible for us to truly believe if one is rich and the other one is so poor that barely has something to eat every day. So where's the justice there? So that's what I'm saying, that if we do not have our faith based on reasoning and knowledge, in some point in life or in time or any circumstance, our faith will be completely broken. There's going to be a situation that you're going to say, okay, yeah, I believed on this, but yeah, now I see God, I thought God was just, but how come this is happening? You're going to start to question. And we do, even as spiritists, even studying all this all the time. When something happened to me, of course I question all the time, because I'm very far away from being a perfect being, right? But then at least with all that knowledge, I can reflect and say, okay, think about it. You know that God's law will never be broken. And you know that there's a justice behind it. And you know that someone above me loves and cares about me so much. So if this is happening, there is a reason. Let's try to find the reason. Let's try to understand. Let's see what actually this is calling me for. Right? And that's why also Spiritism helps us to understand that all the adversities, all the difficulties behind us, around us, is actually a call for some level, some type of transformation. And that's exactly what Jesus tried to show us in all those miracles, phenomena that he did during this time. It's all a call for transformation. All the cures that he performed was to show to that person, and that's why he used that sentence so many times. Your faith cured you. I did nothing. Your faith cured you. And for sure, all those people touched by him, they transformed at that time. They didn't become a perfect spirit right away, for sure not. But that phenomenon helped them to transform, show them that yes, there is justice, there is care, there is love. I can do the same. If Jesus did this to me, I can do the same to someone else. I can be a better person. I can change. I can make this better. Okay? So this is basically the call and the way that we should look into the miracles that we hear all the time. So basically, that's the idea the Spiritists bring to us, and many is like as the Genesis also mentioned, Spiritism consider the Christian religion at a more elevated point. So because they see all the teachings brought by Jesus in a different perspective, we stopped to seeing them as a miracles, but we see them with reasoning. That makes something even stronger. And that helps us to have a better understanding about all the examples, all the circumstances that was brought by Jesus. If you think that, if you try to think about what is the most extraordinary thing that Jesus did in your own knowledge, based on what you have read about Jesus in the gospel, all those stories, all those events, all those circumstances, then if we start to ask, what is the most extraordinary thing Jesus did for you? And then some people say, oh, he was able to cure blind people, he was able to make someone walk, he was able to bring Lazarus to life again. Like, people will connect to the miracles, right? And I'll tell you, I don't think those, again, reinforcing the same idea that I already showed, I don't think those were the most extraordinary things that Jesus did. For me, the most extraordinary thing that Jesus did was when he was captured, and many people question that, well, if you are the king, how come you don't free yourself from this, from the cross? How come you use your power? You are so powerful. You did everything. You bring dead people to life. How come you are not able to free yourself from that? And what Jesus did on those moments, he did nothing. He accepted everything. He accepted all the crucifixion. He accepted everything that the humanity was doing to him at that time. He accepted humbly, and instead of having any hatred or any revenge feeling inside of him, he actually prayed for all those people, right? One of the most important thing that he did in the cross was asking God, the Father, to forgive all those people. So for me, that moment, that action was the most extraordinary thing that Jesus did. That is the true miracle that he's showing. I do this. Everyone here can do this too. Everyone has the seed inside, the seed of goodness, the seed of caring, loving, forgiveness, all those principles. You need to start to practice. Look what people gave to me. Everything, right? It was a huge injustice. But instead of looking for revenge, he was humble to accept. Obviously, he was a superior spirit. He knew that that was nothing. But he knew how important would be his example to the humanity at that time. And it was so important that we are still here more than 2,000 years after, reflecting on that. And as we evolve, we still have a lot more to reflect on that, more and more. Because the way I see is that more we evolve, the more knowledge we acquire in life, in each incarnation, it gives us a different perspective on how we see Jesus, and how we see his example, and how we see his teachings. Like now, for example, I don't see him as just a phenomenon guy, a guy that performs miracles. I see him in another level more deeply. I look at his teachings in a very more deeply way, and there is still a lot more for me to know. I know that. I still need to evolve to get into those teachings even deeper, but we are getting there. Okay? So when we think, what is the most extraordinary thing done by Jesus was exactly that. But that concept about the transformation, the love, the power of love, the power of forgiveness, it's only possible when we know and we understand that we are immortal spirit. That it's not just this life. And Jesus came, and that's why Jesus came 3 days after, and presented physically, not just as a spirit. He was able to materialize himself to his disciples because he knew at that time that was important. They need to touch him. They need to present and say, "Here, touch me. I'm here to show you guys that we are all immortal. Life is a cycle. This incarnation here is just a short period on this journey, right?" And by doing that, he pretty much finalized the most beautiful miracle that he came for, that to show us the principle of immortality and to show us that the main transformation, it all starts in the true love and the true care about everybody, everywhere, in every circumstances. That is like the miracle that we should believe, but not miracle as something that we cannot understand, but as something that is so wonderful and powerful that can transform everybody. That is the miracle that we should believe every day, right? And instead of trying to think about see things in a blind way and have that blind faith, look around. Like humanity needs, we have that necessity to attach ourselves to the mysteries, right? But look around you, and there is miracles every day when we see just ourselves, our body. When we think that all this come from two cells that connect to each other, just two cells, they are able to multiply and make so many different tissues, so many different cells, a brain, a heart, a lung, kidneys, organs that are totally different. Isn't that a miracle? Right? And so, does really God need, do we really need to have more evidence that God exists, the supreme intelligence governance? If you want to stay in the ignorant side, you're always going to believe that the earth is plane. And we still have people like that. We cannot change, right? But there's so much evidence about everything that shows that God does not need to be attached to those type of miracles that still many religions and even spiritism is still very connected, because many people go also to spiritist house because some spiritist house, they want to see the phenomenon of some mediums that are able to touch someone and cure. And we know nowadays about the influence of the spiritual world, the influence of the cosmic fluid, the magnetism. We know scientifically, we can explain how those cures are possible. But that mystery still attracts so much people, right? And many goes just for that phenomenon and not to think about on all the spiritist teachings. And the same happens in any other religions. So try to reflect on what brought you here today. What brought you to study spiritism? What is calling you? So think about that, and you're going to understand what direction you should go. Is that the phenomenon, or really think about the transformation, the power of this knowledge can bring to your life and to you as a human, as a immortal spirit, right? I think that is the most important thing. In Spiritist book, also there's a couple of questions that are not directly about miracle, but they kind of reflect on these principles. that question 18, question 19, question 20, they mentioned, they ask about if human beings will ever be able to understand the mystery of some things that sounds like not fully explained. And the spirits, they are clear to say, yes, as the human beings evolve, they will be able to understand all those principles. And that, like, if you understand, this first book was written like a few hundred years ago, right? More than 150 years ago, 150 years ago. So at the time that there was written, many of the things were still not fully explained, and now science already explains some of the principles, right? So basically, the Spirit was telling, yes, science, humanity will evolve as a natural law, right? And you're going to understand more and more based on the increasing knowledge. It's the same as when one question that we cannot still fully understand is what is God. And the spirits are clear to say that you are not really still ready to understand that. Although we know and we believe there's a God as a supreme intelligence, but we cannot fully grasp the idea. And the Spiritism, with reason, tell us there is an explanation, but we are just not ready for it yet. But many other things we are already like understanding, and the science is here for that. So we can always be blind and decide not to look into it. And it's all your choice. We are a result of our own choices, but the knowledge is here. Take it and use it for the good. Look in the books, read, study, and understand. That's what the Spiritism is calling all of us. So, question 20, it asks, through means other than scientific investigation, is humankind able to receive communications of a higher order that transcend human senses? And this is basically to explain our interaction with the spiritual world, right? And the Spirit says, yes, when God deems it useful, He allows that to happen. So many of explanations also came to us through some communications. And those communications led many other spirits in other times to bring that knowledge into some scientific experiences, and that's how many things were discovered too. So this is also to tell us that it's a combination of our knowledge here, the amount that we study, plus the interaction with the spiritual world. Also knowing that none of us here are just starting in life right now. We all have a background. We are all spirits that God knows how many incarnations we had. So someone very intelligent that we see that creating or inventing something, for sure that this didn't come to his mind out of nowhere. He brings that knowledge that he was building with time, right? So in other words, the miracle, like nothing is like that boom without explanation. There is always a reason that leads all the evolution, right? And when we start to understand that, that clarifies and really strengthens many of our faith and our belief. And one question that I found very interesting and kind of summarize all this idea is the question 802 in the Spirit's book. When Kardec asked the spirits, well, if since Spiritism must mark the progress of humankind, could the Spirit speed up this progress through the general and clear manifestation to convince even the more skeptical individuals? In other words, he was trying to say why the influence of the spirits or God or even Jesus, why they just don't come and show us the evidence right away to make it clear, like any concept that you can imagine. Why they just like materialize here and tell us and explain to us? And the spirits were clear to say, well, you want miracles, but God grant you miracles every day, and yet you don't see it. We all look for something so easy, right? If we have a disease, we don't want to stop and think what this disease is calling me for. What do I need to look inside me and see what do I need to transform here? The disease, none of the disease happen for no reason. It's actually always a call, either a disease on you or a disease on someone you love, because you are directly connected to that person. And that's for sure affects you. And we tend to seek for the easiest solution, right? Instead of doing that reflection and see what can I do to make myself better, to overcome this challenge, instead of that, I Google what is the next spiritist center where there is that medium that can put the hand on me and give me the cure. That's what we do, right? Instead of really think on about what on me I can change. This is calling me. This like I lost my job. I was just fired, and now I'm in a very difficult situation financially. Oh my God, how can I support my family? And that is so much stress, and I see myself as a victim, and the whole world collapse. And in any moment, I really stop to think, what is the call here? What Jesus or God wants from me at this moment? Why this is happening to me? But this why is not in a way to put myself as a victim, thinking of why this happened to me, this is injustice. But in other words, why this is happening to me in a way, what am I being called for at this moment? If this challenging is happening, it's because I've been called to some action. And instead of thinking about that, it's a lot easier to try to blame someone, or I lost my job because that co-worker, they did that, it's always easy to blame others, to see yourself as a victim, instead of really look into the root of the problem, right? And exactly this, the question 802 in the Spirit's book, that's exactly the reflection they bring us for. Because they ask the Spirit, why it's not so simple, they just materialize here and explain to us everything. And they are actually telling us, well, you have the signs all around you all the time. The miracles, look at the nature, look at the sun, look at the universe we live. Do you need really more signs to show that God governed this place? That there's a supreme intelligence that is connecting all this? But yeah, if you are blinded to this, do you think you're going to believe if I just make it simple here and incarnate it here and show everything to you guys? This will not change. If you are not able really to understand the meaning, bring that to your life and make your own transformation, this is going to be meaningless. So instead of that, as the answer also continue, instead of that, God gives to each of you another day every day, which means another morning that you wake up to start some action, to do it different. You can come again that idea of Chico Xavier. We cannot change the past. The past is the past, but you can change the future. You can make your own miracle. You have that opportunity every day. It's up to you to make the correct choice. Okay, so by bringing reason to your life, to your faith, understanding that you are immortal beings, that the God's law are immutable and are present in any circumstance, in any time, we will be able to overcome any circumstances. Because you know that the challenge you are facing, no matter how hard it is, it will pass and life goes on. But you have the opportunity to shorten that pain by doing this transformation or coming again and maybe facing even a more challenging pain or more difficult situation, because the law of justice governs us and that will never change. You have the opportunity to make it different or or stay on that blind perspective. So this is the call I'm bringing you guys today. So basically, the true miracles in my mind are the love, the generosity, the charity, the humility, because we need to be humble to understand that we know nothing. No matter how much you know, it's still nothing, right? It's still, there's so much to learn. There is so much to be open to understand. And that's how we should position ourselves all the time. Like by doing this lecture and reading a little bit more, I learned a lot. Even reading the same thing that I've read a couple of years ago, when you read in a different time, a different perspective, I hope I evolved a little bit. So I think that help us to see things in a different perspective, right? And see that that miracle that we're looking for, sorry, that will not happen. It's not life, like they do not have justice in that, right? If you have, and that's also something that can be dangerous in some situation. And the disease is one of those that people say, no, that don't even go for medical attention. Like we have so much faith. I mean, pray for a miracle. Sorry, that miracle will not happen. Your loved ones or yourself might be cured from that disease. But even the concept of cure is not exactly what we understand. Maybe he will pass away from that disease, because we all gonna pass away from the disease or from anything else. But maybe that's exactly the process of cure that person needs to go through. And all the people involved needs to go through that pain and that difficulty to everybody to grow and to evolve, right? If you think that your faith needs to bring the miracle to save that person, sorry, that will not happen. And that will be the moment that does not happen, your faith is broken and you don't believe in God anymore, and you're just gonna enter in that cycle of injustice, of victim, of not really, or who is God, this does not exist, and question even your own faith, right? But when you have bring reason into it, you see everything in a very different perspective. So you see that the miracle you're looking for is not exactly that idea of miracle that we had. We don't want something easy that just come, touch, and take your pain away. You want the true transformation that will make sure that that pain will never come back to your life anymore. And that's the principle that we need to look for. Okay, so I hope that brings some reflection to everybody. Everybody can go home and think about those ideas, and thank you. In moments for question or comments.
Thank you, Joyce. It was a great lecture about miracles, very clarifying, right? So, do you have any comments on the internet? No? Any comments or questions? That's very true, right? We're always still waiting for miracles, right?
Yeah.
And if you think miracles in terms of being some extraordinary, in terms of beautiful, then yes, they exist. But in terms of being against the laws of physics, that's what reminds. I think that's the problem. We forget that the laws of physics and chemistry, they are the gods of law, because he created the universe, and he's the one who created how the molecules will work and with each other, how they're going to combine, how our bodies work. As also God's creation doesn't need to go against it, right?
And even the things that we hear all the time in the internet, the stories like about someone that was in coma for many, many years, and all of a sudden returned to life, and then everybody, oh, it's a miracle. Okay, you might see that, but it's not exactly the miracle as you see. If that happened, was meant to happen because those people need to go through that process. Nothing happened because, all of a sudden, boom, everything is clear, right? When we have bring reasoning to our faith and you understand the principles of immortality of the soul, the God's law, and all that together, we see that nothing will happen by chance or by miracle. There is always a reason behind it.
And I just reveal to us, through spirits, we understand how body, spirit to spirit, how the connection is done. So when they're in coma, they still are connected to the body. It's not a dead body. Even scientific is not a dead body. the heart's beating, the person's breathing, and some of them are in coma without machines
Yeah,
for
exactly.
the longest time.
Yes.
So there is a connection there, so we know that there's no dead connection,
Yeah.
right? So the spirit is bringing all this north, so that's why when Jesus brought back people who were dead,
They were not
they're
dead.
not
but-
dead because the spirit was still connected
Yeah.
to the body spirit, right? It's just an impression that we had, but it didn't really happen, right?
I have a question about, so there are some, spiritual disease that we carry with us, with the very spirit, and we draw it as we are born. And, sometimes people go to treatments that are just spiritual, that basically, if that's what Jesus said also when he cured, like, your faith cured you, and, it depends on you to not carry that along with you. But there's also like some procedures that some spiritualist centers do that they, like spiritual surgeries.
Yes.
So what's your, that kind of sounds like a miracle, but it's not really. What's
Yeah, because basically, and you are true, it sounds like a miracle in our eyes. But we nowadays understand all the effects of the spiritual realm and the spiritual influence on the cosmic fluid and on the magnetism. There is even a physical explanation for that by the laws behind the magnetism. I'm not an expert on that to go very deep on that, but there is a real explanation why that is happening. Okay, and I can tell you that's my understanding that is still happening nowadays, exactly because we still need to see that, to trust, to believe. Like although we are more than 2,000 years after Jesus, and we evolved quite a lot, but the humanity in general still need to see those things. And that's why, and the Spiritism tells us, when the spirits are questioned why this is still happening, if this was not supposed to, based on this discussion and on this knowledge, those kind of things are not supposed to happen. But the spirits still allow that to happen exactly because we are still child in this journey of evolution, and we still need to see that to call us for some change, and that's why that is happening. But yes, if that happening, it's because it was allowed by the spirits involved in that process. But we need to be very, very careful and see how we look into that, and believe that if you have a problem, there's something more calling you for, and not just to seek for something so easy to be fixable like that.
And even those cures there are still inside the laws of physics.
Exactly.
Absolutely don't go
The
against
law
the
cannot
science.
be broken.
It doesn't matter if it's coming through a spiritist treatment or if it's coming from taking your pills. It's still, none of them goes against the divine laws. So nobody against the science. Science may not be able to fully explain yet, but eventually will through science, and we're going to understand magnetism better and how it does, how it affects the cells, and how those cures happen, right? But we have less and less of this now, because if you really think, in the past, we used to have way more, like millions of cure. How many
Yeah.
millions of cure we have really these days?
Yeah, not only medium of cure, but like in the beginning of spiritism, you have the floating tables, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
Like it is the
exactly.
most physical and like spectacular phenomenon that we can imagine,
Yeah.
and this doesn't happen anymore.
Exactly, because we don't need that anymore to get us our attention anymore. Now we caught our attention, right? So then we don't need it, and that's exactly what it says. And now that in this phase of transformation, the spirits make very clear, now it's not time for the phenomenon anymore. It's time for us to educate ourselves morally. But unfortunately, in any spiritist house, including this one, every time our studies of the books, we empty here, right? But the day that we have passes and this and that, the house is full, right?
And the same as I was listening to a lecture, and they were saying exactly like that. Those houses that has a medium that promotes those cures, they are always full, right? But then when it's for lecture, nobody comes. Because everybody, we as human beings, we are lazy, right? We always seek for the easiest way, right? As I said, if you get a significant disease, Most of us, what do? You search for like an easiest way, or if you are spiritist, you're gonna look for a spirit center. Let's see if they do this cure here. Instead of thinking about what that disease means to you, what you've been called for. And I mentioned disease here, but can be any situation, right?
What do I need to change?
Yes,
Right.
because
If I need
everything.
to change even like I need to change the way I eat. I don't want to cure my cholesterol, but change the way I want you to give me a pill that cures my
Yes.
cholesterol, right? I don't
Then I
want
can
to
keep
get
eating,
it, right?
yeah.
I can keep it whatever I
I'll
want,
not change my
right?
habits. I'll not
Exactly.
it's always an easy way. It's like when you are overweight. It's always easy to say, oh, is there any miracle or a miracle pill or a surgery or something like? It's a lot better than go to the gym every day and change your lifestyle. Right? So it's part of our nature, right? We are all seek for something easy. And Spiritism is actually calling us exactly at this moment. Think about everything. Bring a reason to everything that happened to your life. Nothing happened by chance. Everything is a call. It's up to you to take advantage and answer that call, right?
Thank you.
Awesome.
Those no more comments or
Yeah, I
questions?
find that a couple weeks ago, we had a lecture that was talking about that, like some things that you do, and you know you have to stop, but you don't. So I think it's that idea, like your faith cure, right? That you just ask, but you don't do your part, you don't really
Yeah,
get that miracle, right? The miracle is more about the change.
exactly.
You know, that idea that there was a guy that he always say, oh, I want to win the lotto. And he behaved and say, oh, when he passed, he say, oh, I was good, I did everything. And I always ask, you never ask me, he say, yeah, but you never play one card. That's what he can do it.
Yes,
I think it's
the same idea,
connect
right?
with the same
Principle.
idea, like we have to look at our, what we have to change.
Like you said, and what's cure, right?
Yes,
You can have a disease and do not cure the body disease, but spiritually, that disease can cure you so much.
yes,
Right? We teach you resignation, patience, faith. So what is real cure?
yes.
If you think we're mortal spirits, the cures of that leads us to be better spirits is way more important than the body, right? Not that we should not push to kill our bodies. No.
But have the knowledge, right? Because that will strengthen our faith. Because if you really think that you have, if you are a faithful person, and if the God that you believe exists, if you have a disease, you need to be cured, physically cured in this life. Because if your loved one is not cured and passed away, it's going to break your faith. Because your faith is not based on reason. You are not understanding the laws, the divine laws, the principle of immortality, the principles behind it, right? Their faith is only strong enough in any circumstance when you bring reason to it and you understand what exactly is going on.
Just one quick comment. I know that time is finishing. I just was recently in Fatima, and I was so impressed with people obeying their promises, right? I had forgotten some people in their knees, hard. The energy was so powerful, what I felt. And I started to reflect about that. Their faith. They believe that they were going to be cured, and it doesn't matter which religion or.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
And maybe for those people, that pain is leading them to the transformation we are all seeking for,
Mhm.
right? What the Spiritism is teaching us is that you don't need to go through that physical pain to achieve that. But some people might need that. Some people might need to like go up on all those steps and those knees and feel like going back to like what was done, practices that was commonly done in the past. Some people need that, and obviously we're not here to judge that. And as you said, you feel the energy, right?
Yeah, but their faith
Yeah.
before all that.
But usually when the people are doing that, they're not doing it because they're looking for a cure. Usually they
No,
are paying
they're
a promise. They're paying a promise, which we have talked about this here before, right? It's basically we respect that it's part of everybody's faith, but basically I'm bargaining with God, but He has to give me something first, and then I'll pay after, right? So see how we do those things, like, God, I want you to cure my son, then I'll go up and I'm gonna walk on my, so you give me first. I don't, so it's like you go to your boss and say, you give me a salary first, then I'll work, right? So we need to be careful with that, because it's really for us on a rational faith, when what I'm doing is bargaining with God, and He has to give me first, then I'll go and pay, right? But it is the faith that it's being built up. And the other thing it makes us to believe, and actually right this week I was seeing a video from this guy talking about this, where we believe that God is so, this mean God who actually takes pleasure in seeing me suffering, because that's what we do. If you do that, I'm gonna go on my knees, and I'm going, all those people are like bleeding their knees, like, God doesn't want us suffering. But we actually believe, because we taught, by the way, we just believe in it, made us be fearful of God and create this God that's actually mean, who takes pleasure in seeing me suffering. So every time I make a promise, I promise something that's going to make me suffer, because that's going to please God. And does not please God to see us suffering. He created us for love, He created us to be happy, right? So it's just like for us as a spiritists, we need to analyze it and have a little more rational vision of that. But inside of those people, faith, there is an energy, right? They truly believe that they're doing, they truly believe that they're pleasing God. And that creates a positive energy, because the intention that they have inside of them is really good. But when you think that as a spiritist, we need to have a little more rational vision of that, because God never wants us to suffer, right? Suffering doesn't please Him, right? He doesn't need that. And actually, when He gives us something, it's the only thing that's expecting us is to be grateful and become better people, to take that situation and become more. If anything, we should start promising, you know what, I'm gonna give it back to someone else. Yeah, I'm gonna do something good to someone, right? That will please Him way more than suffering. He doesn't want us to suffer. He didn't create us for suffering. Right?
Yeah. That's a good reflection.
All right, thank you, Joyce.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone that was with us over the internet. Hoping to see you here next week.